So now we are getting into question 4, part A of the AMT. How would the one-handed tribe add 342 base 5 and 234 base 5 using the left to right partial sums algorithm we discussed in class? So let's jump in. So I went ahead and color coded as per usual, with the 3 being teal in the hundreds place. I just want to remind everybody, we'll jump back to our 100 chart, that 5 by 5 is going to represent 100. So if we look for every 5, we get to 10, and then 20, 30, 40, and 100. So after 5 groups of 5, we're going to have that 100. So that's why our 100 is going to look, or I'm sorry, our 100 is going to be a 5 by 5. So I went ahead, since we have 3 of those in the hundredths place, I went ahead and drew 3 different flats. So those are all going to be our 100, 3 different 100. Then I went to the tens place, which is a 4. So I went ahead and did our 4 different rods, because again, it does only have 5, since there's only 5 to get to 10 in the base 5 number system. So since we have those 5, I went ahead and drew 4 of those. Then finally for our 342, I took the 2 in the ones place and drew 2 blocks to represent that 2. Now we're moving on to our 234. So I drew 2 flats to represent the 200, 3 rods to represent the 30, and 4 blocks to represent the 4. So 234 will be our total image there. Now comes the part where we are going to try and combine some of our images to make everything look more equal and be able to come up with our sum. So with the background knowledge that 5 actually means 10 in a base 5 number system, I recognized that we had 5 flats. So it was a 5 by 5 by 5 essentially. So I knew that that was going to be 1,000. So that's what led me to decide that I was going to combine those 5 flats to make somewhat of a 3D shape to represent 1,000. So here I'm just representing that I'm going to be taking those flats and combining them. Then I recognized that I could make another flat by combining the 4 rods from the 40 and 342 and the 1 rod from the 234, because again, we need 5 to create that flat of 100. And then finally, I decided that I could make 1 more rod with those blocks. So I took the 2 from the 342 and the 4 from the 234 to create another 5 for the rod. Now what I'm circling is just what's going to be left over after I've combined all of those good things. So I have 2 rods left over and 1 block. And again, this is just what's going to be remaining at the end. So as stated before, I did make a 3-dimensional shape out of those 5 flats to create 1,000. So on the 342, those 3 flats are going to be the bottom 3 layers there of that cube. And the 2 flats from the 234 are going to be the 2 top layers of that cube, just all equaling to 1,000 since each of those flats represents 100. Now I just went ahead and I'm crossing out those flats just to show that I did use them so that I can come back and make sure that I didn't overuse anything. The next step was adding those rods. So I took the 4 from the 342 for the 40s and 1 of the rods from the 234 to create another flat of 100. And you can see that in the drawing there. So again, I'm just going to cross out those rods that I've used to keep track of what I've used. And then I'm finally going to combine those blocks to create another rod of 10. So I'm taking 2 from the 342 and 3 from the 234 to create another rod of 10. So crossing those out once more, and then finally I'm taking what remains, which is those 2 rods and 1 block from 234, and I'm going to go ahead and show those now as my final production of this recreation of this addition problem. The last step of this is just putting down all my values. So I put 1,000 under the cube, then I put 100 for that flat that I created, and then I have 3 rods, which equals 30. And finally, my one remaining block. So altogether, I found my answer to be 1,131.